Yeah, I heard. No secrets.
No secrets. I'm getting myself oriented here. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. I was lighting candles.
I don't know.
Would anybody like to light candles this evening? Brian and Noel? Aren't you singing? Aren't you guys singing? You guys? Yeah, okay. Not yet. Not yet. You're getting ready. Getting ready.
You may get the jump.
It's always the ideal that you sit in the back row, right? Until the rabbi calls on you. Well, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. We began in song, this particular song from the Psalms, which celebrates our ability to be together this evening, as we welcome one another, as we welcome Shabbat, as we welcome Shir Chadash, our temple choir under the incredible leadership of Stephen Jackson, accompanied by Elvira Spector, as we welcome the St. Mark's confirmation class. We're so grateful that you're here to celebrate Shabbat with us. I apologize I didn't have a chance to come say hello privately before the service, but look forward to greeting you immediately afterwards if you're able to stay for a few minutes and get to know each other a little bit. And so with that, we begin on page 10, as I mentioned, celebrating our ability to come together to celebrate Shabbat. Hinei ma tov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. How good, how pleasant, how wonderful it is when we can be together to celebrate the Sabbath day. Page 10. We turn back in the prayer book to pages 2 and 3. I invite you to join with me as we read from the top of page 3. As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we by our lives give light to all who behold us, as their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we in our own day be among those who kindle light, acknowledging that value, that ideal, that mission in our lives to kindle light in the world. We rise to light the Shabbat candles and welcome forward Noel and Brian Small.
Yes.
As we welcome Shabbat, so we take a moment to welcome one another, to wish each other a Shabbat Shalom with a wave and a hello and a good Shabbos. And once you've greeted the people around you, I invite you to be seated. You may be seated. We read responsively from the middle of page 6. May the door of this synagogue be wide enough to receive all who hunger for love, all who are lonely for friendship. May it welcome all who have cares to unburden, thanks to express, hopes to nurture. May the door of this synagogue be narrow enough to shut out pettiness and pride, envy and enmity. May its threshold be no stumbling block to young or straying feet. May it be too high to admit complacency, selfishness, and harshness. May this synagogue be, for all who enter, the doorway to a richer and more meaningful life. As we seek the strength to do that work and to make this place a sacred and a holy place for all who would enter it, we turn to page 19 to join in song together the words of Psalm 29, the last 2 lines of Hebrew. Adonai oz le'amo yitain, may God give us strength. Continuing in song on page 20, we sing the words of the medieval poem Lecha Dodi as we greet Shabbat as if we are greeting a bride. Page 20. please rise to face the entrance. Page 27. Lamdeni Elohai, teach me, O God, a blessing, a prayer, on the mystery of a withered leaf, unripened fruits so fair, on the freedom to see, to sense, to breathe, to know, to hope, to despair. Teach my lips a blessing, a hymn of praise, as each morning and night you renew your days. Lest my day be today as the one before, lest routine set my ways. We turn to page 28 for the call to prayer, the Baruch Hu. O God, you are as near as the very air we breathe, yet farther than the farthermost star. We yearn to reach you. We seek the light and warmth of your presence. Though we say you are near, we are lonely and alone. O let our desire be so strong that it will tear the veil that keeps you from our sight. Let your light release our darkness and reveal the glory and joy of your presence. We join together in Hebrew, page 32. Ahavat olam, Beit Yisrael, Amcha ahavta, Torah umitzvot, chukim umishpatim, otanu limadata, al kein Adonai Eloheinu, b'shochbenu uvekumenu, nasiach bechukecha, v'nismach b'divrei Toratecha, uv'mitzvotecha leolam va'ed, ki hem chayenu ve'orech yamenu, uvahem negeh yomam v'layla, Ve'havatcha al tasir mimenu le'olamim. Baruch atah Adonai, ohev amo Yisrael. Praise to you, Adonai, who loves your people Israel. Shema Yisrael, our declaration of faith, page 34. You may be seated. And it's Adonai. We read responsively from the middle of page 39. In a world torn by violence and pain, a world far from wholeness and peace, give us the courage to say, Adonai, there is one God in heaven and earth. The high heavens declare your glory. May earth reveal your justice and love. From bondage in Egypt we were delivered. At Sinai we bound ourselves to your way. Inspired by prophets and instructed by sages, time and again we overcame oppressive forces. Though our failings are many and our faults are great, it has been our glory to bear witness to our God, keeping alive in dark ages your vision of a world redeemed. Let us continue to work for the day when the nations will be one and at peace. Then shall we rejoice as Israel did, singing on the shores of the sea, Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, page 40. Please join with me at the top of page 43. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Adonai, help us to walk with good companions, to live with hope in our hearts and eternity in our thoughts, that we may lie down in peace and rise up waiting to do your will. Baruch atah Adonai, hapores sukat shalom aleinu, ve'al kol amo Yisrael ve'al Yerushalayim. On page 44, we sing in celebration of Shabbat by singing some of the words that command us to keep Shabbat from the book of Exodus, V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat, page 44.
Israel
we turn to page 46 as we begin the Amidah, making our way from welcoming Shabbat to acknowledging the presence of God in the world and declaring with Shema our love and our faith, our commitment to God and to the mission of Israel. And now we wind our way to this great and holy sacred mountain as if we're standing at Sinai, declaring God one and recognizing God's presence. We begin the Amidah on page 46. We continue by chanting the next several even-numbered pages. Please rise if you are able as we begin in song. You may be seated as we continue the Amidah with the words on the page through page 63 in silence or with our own private words and meditations. יהיו לרצון עם רפי והגיון ליבי לפניך, אדוני צורי וגואלי. May the words of our mouths, the meditations of our hearts be acceptable to you, O God, our rock and our Redeemer. As we take the time to pray for ourselves and those in our immediate circle, we cannot help but turn our thoughts and our prayers at this time to those of our loved ones, our friends, people in our community and around the world who are in need of healing. As I offer these names on behalf of our community, I invite those who are with us virtually to share the names of those that they are praying for, those in need of healing in their lives, and then we'll invite those who are physically present to add to them. We pray for healing for Jess Weinberg, Lloyd Gerard, Dolores Spector, Adela Seaman, Michael Cohen, Steve Borowski, Julian Garcia, Simcha Bat Reuven, Visaralea, Doris Gluck, Gail Gluck Levinson, Randy Hoffman, Robert Harris, Gloria Crone, Billy's Ann Spear, Marcia Dahlberg, Jacqueline Spear. To those names we add
Joanne Goodman. Ed Chang. Amanda Milton.
We join together in a song, a prayer for healing. A real question, not a rhetorical one, necessarily. What do you think the rabbis say is more powerful than death? More powerful than death? Love, life, living, fear, remembrance. I'm sure we could all, if we took the time, come up with several more, and all of those are good. And probably at some point, somewhere in the rabbinic literature, 2,000 years of tradition, they say all of those things, but none of those are the ones that I would like to share with you today. And we'll get to that in a moment. I'll answer my own question. Our tendency is to get all wrapped up in worrying about the things, measuring our lives by the things that we can touch and count and see, hitting metrics, logging billable hours, making money. But fundamentally, the Torah is about getting beyond those things. The things that we've convinced ourselves are important. It teaches us to reach higher, to see our daily efforts as meaningful insofar as they might help us to do things which are immeasurable and very, very difficult to contextualize with a real, intangible definition, like true justice, community, wholeness, and peace. The Torah describes a world which is seemingly archaic on one hand and is very unsatisfactory to our modern ears. At the same time, though, on the other hand, it describes a world which is seemingly impossible in its perfection. Caught up in an agrarian world of patriarchal assumptions, violence, and slavery, it leaves us feeling disconnected from the ethics of the present. Simultaneously, it is so aspirational in its advocacy for that world at peace, a world full of people who are at one in their commitment to God and God's passionate plea for equality and kindness, that it leaves us reeling from its total disconnection from the realities and the challenges of the present. In this week's Torah reading, we read about the Jubilee year, the 50th year when the land will lie fallow like in the sabbatical years. But along with that, ownership, land rights will return to the original tribes which were assigned to that land by God. Freedom will be granted to all of those who are enslaved. Debts will be forgiven. The world will reset to allow for a new beginning, the creation of a community on the land which might be one bit closer to a world God intended. This year of total rest, the sabbatical of sabbaticals, is a reflection of the weekly Shabbat ideal, that the world and the people who are with us in it, none of it is actually ours to be used and abused however we like. That as God rested, so too do we rest. As it was intended to be, so it can be. As Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, among so many others, writes, the miracles always manipulate physical space, never human nature. Because in our creation, it turns out, we are granted the capacity to choose, a choice left to each and every one of us between good and evil in every single moment as we strive to fulfill our covenantal mission to create a world which is made finally whole. A choice which grants us the sacred obligation to be in partnership with God as those who are meant to assist in bringing about the wholeness that we know is inherently possible if we could just collectively get out of our own way. Shalom, peace, comes from the same Hebrew word as wholeness. Shalem. This resetting of the world with the Jubilee year is something which some of our sages, like the prophet Jeremiah, suggested was never actually observed. But in its ideal, it was about making the world whole after we've taken 49 years of divvying it up, cutting it up, running amok on it, as is our tendency to do. And similarly, like the Jubilee, Shabbat is when we're supposed to take the time to rest, reflect, and recharge each week for the work of emulating God's rest on Shabbat, and then the work of emulating God's creation in the world. On Shabbat, we seek to find the energy, to find the direction, so that we have that energy to do God's work in creating the world on the 6 days of the week. With Shabbat, we find the ability to refocus our efforts on the truest and noblest tasks at hand, and we are able to see, when we pause and observe Shabbat, that there is beauty around us, blessings we missed while our heads were down, cranking out one more deliverable on the assembly line of our misconceived lives. The Torah speaks to our ancestors in a language which was meant to assist them in their quest to pursue this same mission, the mission that they have passed down to us. In a world that knew no days of rest, where the average person was tasked with a regular, nonstop obligation to produce for your master, without honoring the individual with any sort of pause. Into this world, the Torah steps in and says, stop and think and consider. Our Torah insists that if you have charge over someone else, you are required to let them stop. Even your animals were allowed and must be allowed to stop. Our Torah insists that in a world where people were objects and products, our Torah declares to our ancestors, regardless of the situation and the power you hold over someone, you may not be cruel with them. You may not be ruthless. You are never allowed to forget the humanity of the person over which you assume power and control. And that world, by the way, that you think is yours, that land, that produce, that yield, it was never yours in the first place. The Jubilee year is a total reorientation, which, while spoken in an ancient tongue for an ancient life, an ancient world, continues to speak truth even now. It puts into a physical, real-world context those concepts which are so very difficult to make tangible. That idea that love and kindness, justice, peace, and perfection are in fact possible, and that the world was created with those things inherent as possibilities. So it's no surprise, in fact, that our Torah portion this Shabbos concludes with a threefold instruction. You shall not make for yourselves idols, you shall keep my Sabbaths, and you shall venerate my sanctuary, or shall we say, my sacred ideal world which the sanctuary represents. The commandment to observe the Sabbath day is about emulating God. By observing it, we might begin to grasp the holiness that is possible when the world is truly made whole. By observing it, we might begin to reflect on what it will look like when we are doing a better and better job in choosing to do divine work, the work of goodness and the work of blessing. Sometimes those opportunities come and we are able to make changes swiftly, concretely, other times slowly. As Maimonides said, God expects us to take the Torah and to see it realized. God could have abolished slavery. Slavery is described in our Torah portion this week. God could have abolished slavery and altered human nature, but God left that task to us. And it was our fault for taking so long to see slavery abolished. It is our fault that slavery and the imperfections caused by evil human beings persists. And as the rabbis of Pirkei Avot remind us, while the mission may seem so difficult, it is not upon you to complete the work. Regardless, you are not free to avoid it. The rabbis emphasize this notion that the harder work of the soul and spirit, the harder work of peace and justice, tzedek, is far less measurable than the idols of selfishness, like money and power. Yet they taught, and through Shabbat, through rest, through reflection, through reorientation, we might begin to understand that Our little tiny efforts here and now will collectively make a difference in bringing the aspirations of Torah to reality. They wrote, there are 10 physical matters which were created, each stronger than the other. Rock is strong, but iron breaks it. Iron is strong, but fire melts it. Fire is strong, but water extinguishes it. Water is strong, but clouds carry it. Clouds are strong, but the wind disperses them. Wind is strong, but the body resists it. The body is strong, but fear of death breaks it. Death is mightier than all of the aforementioned matters. Yet, and here it is, tzedakah, charity, the pursuit of justice, is the most powerful, for it rescues us from death. It rescues us from death because the effects of our efforts can leave behind a lasting mark, a mark which is greater and more powerful than we could possibly measure or imagine. From the smallest act of kindness to the greatest act of social justice, we are here to be God's partners in the work of making the world whole, shalem. We do that by bringing greater shalom, greater peace into our lives and into the world. So may Shabbat remind us of our responsibilities, and may we find the strength to let go of the idols. May we find the strength to be a blessing, and may our efforts bring the world to wholeness and peace. Shabbat Shalom. As we turn in our prayer book to recognize that Shabbat represents all of these things and more, we turn in our prayer book to page 5 for Kiddush. Please rise as we sing our blessing together. We remain standing as we turn to page 278 to count the Omer. Just as the Jubilee year is 7 times 7 plus 1, the 50th year after 49 years, 7 times 7, so too we count 50 days, 7 times 7 plus 1, from Passover to Shavuot, as our ancestors went and received the Torah at Sinai. Page 278. Hineni muchan umzuman lekayem mitzvat aseh shel sfirat haomer. I am ready. We are ready to fulfill the mitzvah of counting the Omer. Please join me in the blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'sfirat haomer. Hayom chamisha ushloshim yom shehem chamisha shavuot la'omer. Today is the 35th day, which is 5 weeks of the Omer. We continue with Aleinu L'Shabeach, page 282.
Aleinu L'Shabeach Adon HaKol.
You may be seated as we turn to page 288. At this time in our service, we observe and reflect on the blessing of memory and reflect on the impact of those who have died, the way that they leave our lives better and brighter. Page 288. When I die, give what's left of me away to children and old men that wait to die. And if you need to cry, cry for your brother walking the street beside you. And when you need me, put your arms around anyone and give them what you need to give me. I want to leave you something better than words or sounds. Look for me in the people I've known or loved, and if you cannot give me away, at least let me live in your eyes and not in your mind. You can love me best by letting hands touch hands and by letting go of children that need to be free. Love doesn't die, people do. So when all that's left of me is love, give me away. As we turn to Mourner's Kaddish on page 294, I invite those who are with us virtually to add the names of those they are praying for this Shabbos. If I mention the name of a loved one, I invite you to rise. We mourn the recent death of Richard Spector, Lorenzo Pico Escobar, Joe Toby, Bernard Lubetkin, Shirley Harris, Nathan Luger. This anniversary week of their passing, we observe yahrzeit for Molly Alper, Shirley Z. Amstatter, Philip E. Barkman, Howard J. Barnett, Rose Barron, Adeline Blumenthal, Alfred A. Blumenthal, Maxine Bromberg, Howard Bird, Abraham C. Cohen, Minnie Cohen, Nellie DeRoss, David Charles Ehrlich, Jorge Obregon Escobar, Esther N. Fox, Sidney Benjamin Gasser, Fan H. Geller, Ann Goodman Golub, Sally Goodman, Ada Halkin, Frida Shiloff Hill, Herbert Katz, Simcha Kazakish, Stella R. Lent, Sarah Levin, Saul Litt IV, Ian Magin, Sarah Mansfield, Truby May, Linda Mount, John Papa, Melvin L. Potash, Samuel Reedman, Hyman Riven, Howard B. Roisman, Sam J. Rosenberg, Stephen Rosenberg, Linda Sue Ryback, Edwin Simon, Mike Snyder, Rosalie H. Zimmerman. Are there any names to add? We remember them. We remember all of those who have died in recent days in the midst of terror and tragedy in Europe, in Israel, and around the world. We mourn all of those who have no one to say Kaddish for them as we stand together. Page 294. Yit Gadal v'yit Kadash Shemei Rabbah, Be'alma divrach Yerutei v'yamlich malchutei, V'chayachon uv'yomechon uv'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala uv'izman kariv v'imru Amen. Yehi Shemei Rabbah mevarach le'alam ulamei almayah. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal Shemei d'kudusha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, dameran be'alma v'imru Amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, huya aseh shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us, to all Israel, to all the world, as together we say, Amen. You may be seated. As we turn now to announcements, we welcome forward Vladik Krajinovic, a member of our temple board who is with us on the bima.
Okay. Shabbat Shalom. Shalom. Well, first of all, I want to thank Shir Hadash for the beautiful singing. I want to thank Stephen Jackson for leading the choir, and of course, I want to thank our great accompanist, Elvira Spector. Thanks to the rabbi for the wonderful service and to let us kind of participate in this interesting guessing game, and nobody guessed, so I think you won. So thanks to the visitors from the confirmation class of St. Mark's, and I hope you guys stay a little bit after that so we can show you around. We have not only beautiful services, we have a beautiful building with many interesting places to visit. Thanks to Susan Jeffy, who was greeting us. Thank you for the Shabbat sponsors, streaming sponsors, Susan Schwartz in memory of Shirley Amstetter. Bima flowers were sponsored by David and Moshe Ledebor in honor of Iran Brown. Jaime and Lori Papa in memory of John Papa, Rick Amstetter and family in memory of Shirley Amstetter, and Randy Mansfield in memory of Sarah Mansfield. Kiddush, and again, everybody is welcome to participate in the Kiddush, is sponsored by Annette Stone in memory of Ian Magin, and Georgina Leons Escobar in memory of Jorge Obregon Escobar. Tomorrow there will be Torah study at 9:30 in person in the boardroom and online, and services in person and online at 10:30. Sunday, 9:30, last day of religious school and celebration in Braden Abood Memorial Park. It is hosted by the Men's Club and by the Sisterhood. Everybody is welcome to attend, and there will be, for those who missed the snacks before the services, there will be snacks over there. So please, everybody is welcome to attend. Then Thursday, May 26, we will have at 10:30, as usual, adult education with Rabbi Seidman, again in person and on Zoom. Choir practice will be on Thursday in the evening at 5:30 on May 26. Kala, there is still possible to register. May 27 through 29 in Tucson, Arizona, in the luxury retreat at Tanque Verde Ranch. So if you want more information, please contact the temple. And this event was made possible in part by the grant from the Jewish Community Foundation. Then later on Friday, June 3rd, there will be confirmation. So please come and celebrate our confirmance. That's during our usual Shabbat service at 6:15. June 2nd and June 9th, there will be on Zoom lecture by Jane Larkin on interfaith families. Again, see your temple email for details. And last but not the least, Jewish Food Festival, as you may know, is rescheduled for July 31st. So that's one more opportunity to eat great food. Okay, thank you very much, and Shabbat Shalom.
I also just want to again express gratitude to Shir Hadash, to Stephen Jackson, Elvira Spector, Vladik Krajinovic, Keith Myers. Thank you so much, Susan Jaffe, and thank you to all of you who are here with us, helping us to make this Shabbat so special and so wonderful. As we conclude our service in song, we turn to the very bottom of page 343, these words from the Song of the Sea from the book of Exodus. Ozi v'zimratya v'hili lishua. God is my strength and might. God will be my salvation. Again, that's at the very bottom of page 343. If you are able to rise, please do as we join in song together.
Amen.
we find that this Shabbat gives us the opportunity to see the goodness and blessings that are present in our lives and in the world. And may it give us the strength to take on the week ahead, to find more ways to bring goodness and blessing into the world for more people. Shabbat Shalom. Please join us. I believe we're either in the lobby or just outside for Kiddush and Motzi. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Shabbos. It's fine. This,
Linda's
good.
and
Sometimes Gloria comes, but not when she's going to be here.
Sylvia.
Good. There's another opportunity on the sign-up list for the summer. In the long email I sent out, one of there's some lots of this to slot.
I'll do it. That's fine. We stayed like an hour. Because we sat in shoes.
Oh, good.
Did you turn it off?
No, I can't reach it from here. But I can turn this.